So the big, beautiful bill, they've been in meeting all night, so we can ask about that. We can ask what's going on with the Freedom Caucus and some of the GOP holdouts. What is it that they are looking for? Hello, Representative.
Hi, is this Libby?
It is. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. So you're with the Freedom Caucus, and you guys have been working on getting this bill up to snuff. Can you tell us what some of your concerns are with the bill?
Yeah. Well, so I am one of the Freedom Caucus members that did vote for it in committee. It's obviously the priority for the president, and it's also one that has a lot of good things in it. As I was reading through the bill, there's a lot of good pieces, but there's still some parts that we're concerned about on the spending side. And so the Freedom Caucus leadership has been negotiating with the Speaker and the White House to try to increase the savings, instead of having the savings start in years 5 through 10, actually have the savings start year 1. And so, of course, the president was here yesterday, and we all felt like that the president wants the same thing, and so there's still just some last-minute negotiations that they're working through.
Why would the savings not start in year 1? This is something that we see with so many bills, right?
Yeah.
And just as as an editor and as a consumer of news, I often find myself opening up these 1,000-page bills, and even though I can read English perfectly well, I find myself a little bit lost. So why, in this case, are so many of the provisions pushed off for a few years?
That's what we're asking, because we don't understand it either, and I don't believe that that's what the White House wants. The fact that we're $36 trillion of debt, if they're going to push those cuts back, let's say 5 to 10 years, we're going to be paying interest on the debt up until that point. We're not going to get any benefit from it. And this is some of the things that we all, the president campaigned on, we campaigned on, eliminating all of the Green New Deal stuff, all of the IRA, whether it's credits for green energy, EV mandates, pieces like that. Get rid of it, and also just by bringing those cuts forward immediately, it reduces our debt and deficits much quicker. I don't know exactly who put that idea in to push it back out that far. It meets all the criteria of our 10-year window that we worked in, but we need to operate in year 1 for cuts, not in year 6 or 7.
If it stays that way and it is year 6 or 7, is there a chance that whoever is heading up the next administration, if that were a Democrat administration, would they be able to reverse some of these things?
Absolutely. That's what we're concerned about.
Just as you guys are reversing, some of the stuff from the previous administration now.
Yes, no, absolutely. That's what we're concerned about. It's like, and I would think that, President Trump and all of us, all the Republicans should want credit for eliminating it immediately. I mean, when Democrats are in charge and they enact the EV mandate, it happens, within a year or two. I mean, it doesn't take long. I mean, they move very quickly, and we should do the same thing to repeal it. We don't want these things to start growing legs and actually become big programs that don't go anywhere, and we can never get rid of them. And I think the American people elected President Trump for action today, and not waiting until after his administration is gone. So that's there's only a couple of people that are really hung up on that. We have members from New York, California, New Jersey that are also pushing for larger deductions for their constituents in those expensive tax states on what they call the SALT provisions. State and local taxes can be deducted off of their federal taxes. I completely oppose the concept. It's been around for several years now. They're trying to increase that number. We should not be rewarding states like New York for their irresponsible spending. Unfortunately, taxpayers there have to pay it, but they don't have to live there if they choose to move somewhere else.
Yeah, I actually moved from New York City to West Virginia a couple of years ago, and I have been stunned by my tax bill alone. It's been unbelievable, an unbelievable change. Why was what's the situation with the SALT deduction? This is something that I think a lot of people hear about, and we don't always know exactly what it means. It's more, it's more stuff that representatives say, and we're all like, what is just even going on? Why did this come about? Was this to help Republican members of Congress in these blue states? Why is this something that's going on?
It is. I mean, some of the New York members and New Jersey members and California members are pushing for it. They're fighting for their constituents. I understand that. They want their constituents to pay less in taxes, but it should not be at the expense of other Americans. In fact, that was what President Trump's message was to us as a conference yesterday when he came down to the Capitol. He said, drop it, drop the SALT provisions. He's like, there's no reason that states like Indiana or other conservative states should be subsidizing states like New York or California or New Jersey because they're high tax states. Let's put the blame where it belongs rather than actually bailing them out. Again, I know they're looking out for their voters and their taxpayers, but again, at some point, and I believe this strongly, that the states like New York, California, and Illinois are ruining this country at the federal government level. Interestingly enough, and this is another place we need to make changes, is in our healthcare cost. The state of California, their Medicaid reimbursement rates is about $160 billion a year. That's larger than the state of Florida's entire state budget. And so that's the problem here is we have states like California, New York, that are just simply taking more than they're actually giving. And it's got to stop because it's breaking the bank.
California's Governor Gavin Newsom recently came out and was talking about the California budget and said there was a huge deficit that was like since Trump took office. And most of it, I think, is because of what they have Medi-Cal payments. A lot of what I've heard, I have, very lefty mom, and a lot of what I've heard about this, the big, beautiful bill from people on the left are concerned about Medicare. So I'd love to just go through some of that. The bill has work provisions for people who are capable of working. It has co-pays for people who are above the poverty line, which I guess would bring everybody in line with everybody else who pays, I pay co-pays. And then what are some of the cuts to Medicaid and how do those work?
Well, one of them that I strongly support and would actually like to see increased is that if you're going to use Medicaid to service illegals in healthcare, that there's a penalty. First of all, it shouldn't happen at all.
Right.
But states like California do it, and so they get less money from Medicaid. Again, Libby, I tell you, healthcare in this country is upside down, and this is the problem that we need to address. It's not going to happen in this bill, and I think what we all know is that we got to get the economy back on track. Let's make sure the tax cuts are permanent. Let's make sure that no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. The one that I like a lot is the Made in America car tax credit.
I love that. That's so fun. Who doesn't want a new car without having to be totally burdened with the interest on the car loans? Because those are expensive loans, too. I mean, those get up there.
They are, especially with interest rates higher right now. That's a huge benefit to support Americans, but also to support American manufacturing. But, so there are some provisions already to try to rein in the spending on Medicaid, and this has happened over the past decade. We were all told by the Democrats back when Obamacare passed that Obamacare was going to fix our healthcare system. It's going to, lower cost. It hasn't, and now, as many of us said back then, the Democrats are trying to shove Americans all into this one, healthcare plan for all. What they call free, it's not. It's one of the most expensive. Is that they wanted Medicaid for all, and that's what's happening. And people in my district can't afford private insurance. They may work for a company that doesn't offer insurance, so they're generally looking for what is affordable. And because of the subsidies from the federal government to the states, Medicaid becomes the affordable choice, along with like a Medishare program, which I highly encourage. But but Medicaid is breaking the bank. And so we're going to have to tackle healthcare costs. One of the things that President Trump did do just recently is that he started putting price caps on pharmaceuticals. I'm a free market guy, but unfortunately what's happened over time is that government is taking over the industry of healthcare. And I think that price caps are something that need to be discussed, because that's the only way we're going to rein in the costs that the federal government's paying, and the debt and deficit are just spiraling out of control.
Yeah, I thought that was really essential as well, especially because Americans are essentially footing the bill for all of the R&D for all of the drugs in the whole world. There's no reason that shouldn't be shared. I had another question for you. There was another thing in the bill that I think is really interesting, and it's this Golden Dome, which is it's like sort of like Israel's Iron Dome. It's a self-defense thing. How does that work? What does that look like in terms of actual, what would it look like in practice? And what does it mean for American jobs in that whole sector?
Yeah, I think this is an exciting program. Again, as I said, there's so many good things in the bill already, and defunding Planned Parenthood is one of them. Stopping funding transgender surgeries, things like that. But this is one of our defense pieces that are in the bill, and President Trump has talked about the Golden Dome for a while now, and as you mentioned, it's similar to the idea of the Iron Dome that Israel has. And as soon as a rocket is launched into Israel, a defense rocket is launched back in response to that rocket and knocks it out of the sky, and keeping it from hitting its target and saving lives. And so in this case, and we actually build the satellites that will be used for the Golden Dome in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I toured the facility a couple of weeks ago. It's exciting because you have technology and manufacturing coming together to support our national defense. But China is building up an incredible arsenal of ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles. And the question is to China, why? And of course, now they're grumbling today, saying that because President Trump has announced the Golden Dome project, that we are now going to make space into a battlefield. Well, we have to be able to defend America and our allies, and the fact that we can keep an eye on the world from space, we can watch China and make sure that they're not launching a missile at anybody that we wouldn't want. And of course, then we could launch a defensive missile back at that and knock that missile out of the sky. So that's why China doesn't like it. I think it's brilliant, and the fact that we have that sort of technology and capability is going to serve our country in the long term. Somebody asked, well, is the price tag of about $150 billion worth it over 20 years to build the Golden Dome system? And I tell people, I said, look, I was just in Syria a couple of weeks ago, and I saw how much destruction was done by Bashar al-Assad on his own people from just launching rockets into communities. And it was probably anywhere between $500 billion to $1 trillion worth of damage. If we build a system that defends the United States and keeps a missile from landing in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles or Washington, D.C., the amount of money that we would protect from being destroyed is incredible. So I think it's worth it. The Chinese are giving us a reason to because of their buildup. And President Trump's doing the right thing by keeping America first and creating those jobs right here at home and making sure the country's safe.
What does the situation look like on the ground in Syria? So Bashar al-Assad was deposed. He was replaced with someone who has a history of being involved with, I don't know if it's the Islamic State or the Islamic Brotherhood or
Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda. Yeah, there you go. Al-Qaeda, terrorist organization. And now we've lifted sanctions on Syria. What does that mean for Syria and for the region? And is his involvement with terrorism something that is going to be a problem in a region that's already plagued with that?
Yeah, well, he's 42 years old. He is young, but he does have a checkered past being involved in terrorist organizations. Best we can tell, from our research is he was predominantly focused on al-Assad. He was born in Damascus, raised in a middle-class family, and he was also focused on ISIS. He definitely was part of terrorist organizations that Americans fought against, and they fought against us. My feeling after visiting with him for about an hour and 15 minutes in Damascus is that we need to give him a chance. We need to give the Syrian people a chance. But at any point he makes a mistake, sanctions are back on, penalties are back on. And I told him that, we want to see the Syrian people have an opportunity to rebuild their country after what Assad did to them. Assad was a monster, and the fact that he killed his own people to maybe up to about 1 million people, millions of people fled Syria and went to other countries. The history there is incredible. It's a holy city, it's a biblical city. The opportunities that are there and the potential that's there is enormous if President al-Shara takes advantage of that. And I asked him, what would his vision be of a relationship be like with Israel? Of course, our great ally in the Middle East. And he said that he was actually open to the Abraham Accords. That would be huge. Yes, he did. I was
That's really surprising.
surprised.
Yeah. I mean, Trump was also suggesting that Saudi Arabia get involved in those accords. Do you think
Yes.
that, I was a big proponent of the Abraham Accords during Trump's first term because it really did bring some stability to that region, which is always so tumultuous, for I don't know how many thousands of years. It's always been a little tumultuous, but in our lifetime, what do you think is the hope? Is there a hope for peace in that area? I mean, it's like Israel is, everybody is enemies with Israel. It's a sort of terrifying situation to be a nation right there. What is that looking like? Do you think that there will be, what's the hope for peace there?
I think there is. I think there really is a genuine opportunity for peace. One of the things that I think is good is that the Saudis, the Qataris, UAE, they're already a part of the Abraham Accords. They've been really, kind of putting their arm around Syria and saying, look, we want to help. Going back to President Trump and his Trump doctrine, I believe, is peace through strength and prosperity. And I've got to believe that, and I heard this a lot when I was in Syria, that people are so tired of war. They want to be able to build their country back. And President al-Shara told me, he understands the important location that Syria is to the world, where it's the intersection between the East and the West. He talked about trade. He talked about commerce. He talked about tourism. I mentioned to him, I said, Christians from around the world would love to go visit Jerusalem and Syria, to see the road that Saul walked on.
Oh, for sure. Could you imagine?
As he was going to Damascus.
Well, I guess you've been there. I've never been there. That sounds amazing. I would love to see that.
I know. I got to walk on that road, and it was an incredible moment.
Wow.
Just being able to walk where Paul walked, and so he seems to be grasping all that and is open to that. He did tell us that he had an offer from the Russians already to come in and support him and his government, but he didn't accept it. He wanted to talk to the West. He wanted to talk to President Trump, and he had that opportunity recently. So I'm very hopeful.
Well, that's so great to hear. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Libby. Great to be with you.
Thanks.